Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Nelson, in case you don't know me, and I am the Director of Westmont Counseling and Psychological Services, also known as CAPS. I wanted to make this short video just to talk a little bit about how to manage this season. So wherever you're at, maybe things are going really well, maybe things are not, maybe things are a mix of both of those. This video is meant to give you some ideas and things you can do to manage in this season we find ourselves in. You're probably sitting there and being like, wow, isn't he in a really nice office? Like he has a picture of a dog back up here. This is not my office, friends. This is my garage. And I will give you a little tour of it while I'm sitting here. See, it's not so pretty. There's a pile of junk on the ground, a garage door. We got a little mattress over here. You might be like, why is this guy in his garage? And I will tell you, because I don't have anywhere else to go. Just like many of you, you are probably trapped and cooped in a location that is somewhat less desirable. In this garage, it is cold. There's no heat source, so I'm freezing. It smells really bad because I have a cat, and the cat litter box is about 3 feet that way. And it's also kind of sad in here. I am isolated. I'm in a garage talking to a camera. And the reality is many of you may find yourselves in similar circumstances. I tell you all that about the garage because I feel like it, in some ways, there is a metaphor for this garage in our lives right now. Things are kind of cold. Things are kind of dark. We don't really know what's happening with this virus and where it's going. And what else? It's cold. It's dark. It's also super isolating. There's lots of places I would rather be than this garage. People I'd be rather connected to. And it also stinks, whether it's an actual litter box or the reality that graduation has been postponed, or the fact that we don't get to do a lot of the activities that we like to do, or the fact that we have to deal with so many dropped technology issues with Zoom and all those kinds of things. If I have to do one more Zoom meeting, I feel like my eyes are going to fly out of my head. I don't know how that's possible. And I feel like there is this metaphor in this garage because it's a very much kind of the situation a lot of us are in, where it feels kind of cold and dark sometimes. We feel pretty isolated and it just stinks. So I'm going to give you a couple things to think about. And what's really important in this is not so much, sure, there's things that we can do, but really how we choose to think in this time is really, really critical. And I'm going to use a little bit of things I've gotten from someone named David Kessler, and he talks a little bit about how we can manage this. David Kessler, he is someone who is an expert on grief of all things, and he recently wrote a column, it was interviewed for a column by the Harvard Business Review. He talks a lot about how what we're going through, a lot of us are experiencing is really just grief. And grief, you think about grief like, oh, someone died. It's really terrible and grief. And grief in this context is kind of similar to that. Of course, people are dying, which is really difficult. But grief also looks a little different in these times. Let me read a quote from him, and we'll go from there. He says talks about our world has changed. We feel the world has changed, and it has. We know this is temporary, but it doesn't feel that way. And we realize things will be different. Just as going to the airport is forever different from how it was before 9/11, things will change. And this is the point at which they have changed. The loss of normalcy, the fear of economic toll, the loss of connection. This is hitting us, and we're grieving collectively. We're not used to this kind of collective grief in the air. And that's the experience that we're facing right now. Like, I don't want to be in my garage. No offense to my garage. I'm happy to have a garage, but I don't want to be in here. And wherever you're at may not be what you expected, what you hoped, what you planned. Maybe you planned on having this really nice spring on campus, wrapping up classes, graduating, going on trips, having a lot of good times. For seniors, my heart really goes out to you. There's a lot of grief in this time of things that we had hoped that are not present anymore. And it's important for us to recognize that and be aware of that. And another part of this that's difficult too is there's also this thing that David Kessler calls anticipatory grief. So like this anticipated grief. And that's the concern about what the future holds and what this all means for us. And he talks about there being almost this feeling like a storm is coming, and maybe even the storm has arrived for a lot of us, that there's something bad looming out there and we just are really confused about what it is and how it's going to directly affect us. And it is in ways already directly affecting us. David Kessler quotes, "Our primitive mind knows something bad is coming, but you can't exactly see it." And I think that's where a lot of us find ourselves. And that breaks our sense of safety. We have this sense of safety, this comfort that we feel that we typically live in, but that's being compromised, or so it would feel right now. I mean, it's kind of like that thing when you're driving in a car. Like, a lot of us forget that when you're in a car, you're going like 80 miles per hour in a metal box, and there's lots of other metal boxes around you with other people that are texting and talking and laughing and singing out loud and not really paying attention to driving. And then you get in a car accident and you're like, whoa, I had forgotten how fragile this life is. Well, in ways, that's a small example of the situation we find ourselves in now with this anticipatory grief. So he talks about then, and this is, I think, a great comparison. If you know anything about, if you've been in Psychology 101 or any of these kind of intro psych classes, which I don't think is actually Psychology 101 at our school, but there are ways to handle this stuff. And there's stages of grief that all of us go through. And this is not a sequential thing. Sometimes we bounce around. But when something bad happens, a lot of times the first thing we go through is denial. Like, this is not happening. Like, I'm not going to be affected. I'm going to be fine. I'm really young. So we kind of deny that it's actually going to affect our lives. And then there's anger. Like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is happening. And we get angry at other people or angry at ourselves or the situation. So it starts off with denial, a little bit of anger. And then also we go to bargaining. Okay, so if I isolate for 14 days, then things are going to get better, right? Like maybe by April, whatever, then we can go back to normal, right? So there's this kind of bargaining that we go through as we're trying to cope with all this stuff. And then the next part is depression or sadness. And not just depression in the sense of becoming clinically depressed, but a lot of us will experience a lot of sadness in this. Like, I don't know when this will end. And I don't know like how to have a lot of hope for my future right now with all this stuff happening. The cool part is the last part of this stage of grieving is the last part of it is acceptance. And acceptance is what we're trying to get to. And that's where our power lies, where we can, do things that we can to control our situation. And one of the things that David Kessler talks about is I can wash my hands, I can keep a safe distance from people, and I can learn how to be in the situation even though I don't like it. What I think acceptance means, even more, expanding it a bit more than that, is making space in our lives for the reality that we find ourselves in. I didn't choose this, you didn't choose this, I don't want this, you probably don't want this, but this is kind of the space that we find ourselves in now. It's not like God called me or called you in advance, was like, hey, I'm going to be dropping this plague and everyone's going to get all messed up. Are you cool with that? That didn't happen. And I don't know if God called Scott or something like that and asked for his permission or his thoughts on this, but this sucks. It really does. And we don't really know why it's happening or why God has allowed something like this to happen to our world. But at some level, this is the place that we find ourselves in. When things are hard, when things are difficult, a lot of times we get wrapped up in the difficulty that comes. And so it's easy to get angry or sad or overwhelmed, and those emotions are real, and we kind of have to experience those things. What I also encourage you to is openness and acceptance of the fact that this is where we are. And so sometimes we have to cry, sometimes we have to be angry, sometimes we have to be anxious, and that's okay. But also in this too, I think what's really important is that we open up to this experience and be like, okay, this is where I'm at. I don't like it. Now what am I going to do about it? And so by leaning into friends, leaning into people, staying engaged, staying active, that can be really, really important. When things are hard, a lot of times we disconnect. We get bogged down by our anxiety or our sadness or wherever we're at. I mean, even for myself, like it's easy to get overwhelmed in these times. But it's also important when you're in these times to remain engaged with what's important to you. What do you care about? When we get depressed or sad, like we start to let go of those things that really give us passion in life. And it's important to reconnect with some of those things. And so as you're navigating through this, and sure, emotions come along, and make space for those things, because there's no way of like pretending everything's like butterflies and rainbows. Like, it's hard. It is. But how do we kind of make space for that hardness, that difficulty, grieve it, and also control some of the things we can? remember the serenity prayer. And like, there are things in our lives that we can control and things we can't. And that maybe God can give us, or we can ask God for wisdom to know what we can control and what we really cannot. So what you can control in this time is owning the emotions you experience, leaning into people you care about, and controlling what you can. Like, okay, today I'm going to work on my resume. I'm worried about my future, but I can work on my resume. I can't control the job market, but I can sure do this. Or I'm going to reach out and connect with some people. I'm going to make some contacts and do some of those kinds of things. One of the goals that we have at CAPS is to continue supporting students. And so you're going to find on our website, there's other links on resources and what you can do to be taking care of yourselves in this time. If videos are helpful, if you find this helpful, we'll be posting more of these, and I'll be happy to talk more about like how to, I don't know, survive living at home or survive living with roommates that you're cooped up with and you're like, and I'm done, or whatever's going on for you. So I'll be happy to make some more of these videos. We're also offer free and confidential counseling still through CAPS. If you're interested in an appointment, even if you just want one appointment where you can talk to somebody who's trained and educated on how to talk about stuff that we go through, a therapist or a counselor, just go to our website. There's something on there that says request an appointment. You just go to that, fill out a form. It takes about 5 minutes, and then someone will reach out to you about scheduling a virtual appointment. That's an option for everybody. It's free and confidential. Reach out, talk to people that are around you, be in connection. You know, if you're concerned about your future, be in connection with Career Development and Calling. They've got some great resources and great things that they've been doing. Be engaged with the community. Chapel is not required, which, you know, sometimes hard to go to things that are required, but it's not required. And so in ways, I really strongly encourage you to attend the chapel services and remain connected to this community in ways that are helpful and supportive for yourself and for others. And do what you can to cope in this time. There'll also be articles on our website on specific ways to cope. So if you're like, how do I manage this anxiety that I have? Or how do I cope with the feelings of sadness? There'll be stuff on our website about that. As we all navigate this, as I navigate this garage that I'm in now with the cold, the dark, the isolation, the litter box that smells bad, that I really need to change, but we ran out of litter and I don't want to go to the grocery store because of all the, you know what I'm talking about. We just sometimes have to deal with this where we're at. So whether the litter box in your life is that annoying little brother who keeps running into your room when you're trying to go to class, or if it is that nagging sense of like, where am I going in this, or what's happening, whatever that thing that is stinking up your life, I hope that you open yourself up to it and control what you can. Take care of yourself in this time. We're all in ways suffering and grieving in this, but there are also ways that we can manage it that make it more tolerable. Because it's far better to do together in community, taking care of ourselves, taking care of each other, than it is to do it alone and isolated in a place that stinks. So on that note, I'm going to end this video here, and I'm going to leave the garage because I need a break from it, and I hope you take care of yourself as well. Thank you so much.